The blade came out of the snow before the man did. I saw it as a seam of gray against gray, a spear edge tilting up from a drift that should have held nothing but old ice, and I threw myself sideways off the trail so that the throw meant to open my throat took me across the shoulder instead. The cold of the cut came a heartbeat after the heat of it. Then the drift stood up on both sides of the pass and became men, cloaked and white-crusted, patient as they had needed to be to lie in that killing cold long enough to ambush a king. I had ridden the Ashen Pass 100 times. I knew every turn of it, every place a stone could hide a foot, and I had ridden it that morning alone but for my gray and 6 of my own sworn men because a raven had come down from the North Watch 3 nights running saying the border was breached, saying wolves not of Karnath were crossing the high snow, saying come quickly, before the drifts close the pass till spring. A king answers his own border, so I had come. There was no breach. There had only ever been the raven and the men in the snow and the road narrowing to a throat between 2 black walls of rock, and my 6 sworn men. I turned to call them to the ring, to put our backs together the way we had a dozen times, and my 6 sworn men were not drawing steel. They were sitting their horses at the mouth of the pass, reins loose, watching. One of them looked away. That is the thing I remember cleanest of that whole white morning. Not the blades, not the blood already going to ice on my sleeve, but a man I had knighted with my own hand looking down at his saddle so he would not have to see me understand. Grail understood before I did. My gray came off his haunches with a sound out of the oldest part of the world, and the first man who reached for me lost the reach and most of the arm with it. And for a moment the pass was mine, the great wolf and I turning together, back to back, the way we had turned since I was a boy who could not yet lift a sword, and he was a pup who could not yet be told no. There is no bond in Karnath deeper than the one between an alpha and his gray. His life is knit to mine and mine to his. Wound him, you wound me. The day he falls is the day I fall. My council thinks it a weakness in a king, one throat to cut instead of 2. I have always thought it the truest thing I own. They knew it too. That was the whole shape of the trap. They did not come for me, they came for him. I heard the bows before I saw them, the flat wet cough of strings gone stiff in the cold, and I turned to put myself between the shafts and my wolf, and I was half a breath too slow, because I am only a man, and a man cannot outrun an arrow he cannot see. 3 took Grail in the flank and shoulder. He did not cry out. He only staggered, and the whole world tilted with him, because when the gray staggers the alpha's knees go weak, and I went down on one of mine in the snow with my sword still in my hand and no strength left in the arm that held it. Then the mountain moved. Whether they cut it loose above us, or whether the shouting and the falling brought it down on its own, I will never know. The wall of white came off the high shoulder of the pass with a sound like the sky clearing its throat, and it took the ambushers and it took Grail and it took me. And the last thing I saw before the cold closed over my head was one of the men who had watched me die turning his horse to ride down and tell the gray hold that their alpha king was lost in the drifts of the Ashen Pass. Gods keep him, and would not be coming home. I did not drown in it, though it is very like drowning. The snow packs and holds, and the cold reaches into you and starts patiently to put out the fire. I could feel it doing that. I could feel Grail somewhere below me, his heart going slower and mine slowing to match it, and I thought, with the strange calm of a man already half gone, so this is how. Not in a war, not in a fair fight, in the quiet by the hands of men who would not look at me. And then hands, real ones. They found me by the sword. I had kept it up out of the snow without knowing I did, and the pommel must have showed dark against the white. And they came into the drift after me, the way you go after a thing you mean to have back, digging, hauling, cursing in a low, steady voice that had no fear in it and no gentleness either. The cold in me was so complete by then that the touch of a living hand on my collar felt like fire, and I made some sound, and the voice above me said, not kindly, "Still in there, are you? Good. Then help me or die faster, your choice," and got a fist in the back of my coat and pulled. I have led armies. I have broken a rival's shield wall with my own front rank and held the line at the cairn until the snow turned red and then black. I have never in my life been as glad of anything as I was of that grip. I got a knee under me. I got the other. I clawed up out of the drift on my elbows with someone hauling at me the whole way, and when the wind cut across my face at last I turned, blind and shaking, and said the only word in me. The wolf. The pulling stopped. There's a wolf, the voice said. The cold had my jaw. Grail Gray down there, please. I could not see her yet. I could only see a shape crouched black against the white, hooded, snow-crusted, breath-smoking. The shape went very still, and I understood later what that stillness was. She was weighing me. A stranger, half dead, no coin on him worth the risk, asking her to go back down into a live drift on a shifting slope after an animal that would likely be dead already, and that, if it were not, might tear the throat out of whoever reached it first. Any sensible soul in the whole of Karrnath would have said the wolf is gone. Come, walk while you still can. She said nothing. She turned around and went back down into the snow. I have never been able to describe to anyone what the next while was because I was not properly in it. I remember the wind. I remember her cursing the slope. I remember once a sound that was Grail, thin and wrong and alive, and the way it moved through me because his pain is my pain, so that even mostly dead in the cold I flinched with a wound in a shoulder that was not mine. And I remember her voice going different just for that one moment, going low and even and almost tender, the way you speak to a frightened thing you do not want to spook, saying, "Easy, easy, big one. I have you. I have you." And Grail, who has let 3 men in his life put a hand on him and torn the hands off 2 others who tried, letting her. Then she came up out of the drift dragging 6 stone of dying wolf across her own back like a sack of grain. And the 2 of us, the Alpha King of Karrnath and a woman whose name I did not yet know, half carried, half fell that gray down the throat of the pass, and through the black trees to a stone hut at the tree line. And she kicked the door in because her hands were full, and the last of the light went out of me on her floor. I woke to firelight and the smell of pine tar and blood and something bitter boiling, and to the sound of a woman breathing hard through her teeth over the body of my wolf. I could not move at first, and I did not try. A king learns early that the most useful thing he can do in a room he does not understand is lie still and watch. So I watched her. She had her hood down now. She was younger than the voice had made me think, and older than firelight is kind to. A hard, spare face, weather-cut, with a scar through one eyebrow and dark hair scraped back and bound with a leather cord, and her sleeves shoved up past the elbow and her forearms red to the wrist. She was kneeling over Grail with a long needle in her fingers and her whole self bent to the work of it, drawing the shafts, packing the wounds, sewing them shut in the light of a fire she had built up until the little hut roared with it. She worked the way soldiers work under fire, no wasted motion, no soft words now, jaw set, breathing through the ugly parts. My Gray lay under her hands with his eyes half open, and every so often his lip would draw back from the pain of it, and she would say, without looking up, I know, hold still," and he would. When she had finished with him, she sat back on her heels and pressed the heels of both hands into her own eyes for one moment, and then she got up and came to me. I closed my eyes and let her think me still under. She was not fooled. "Don't play dead with me," she said. "I dug you out of a live slope. You can open your eyes." I opened them. Up close she had eyes the gray-green of the underside of a leaf in a storm wind, and they went over me the way she had gone over Grail, reading the damage, not the man. She peeled the cloth off my shoulder where the first blade had opened it, made a low sound that was neither pity nor approval, and set about it with a fresh needle and a flask of something that went into the cut like a brand. I did not make a sound. She noticed that too, I think. She glanced at my face once quickly when she pushed the needle through, and something in her own eased a fraction to find me watching the ceiling and holding still. "You'll keep the arm," she said when she'd tied it off. You'll keep most of the fingers if the toes don't take the frost worse than they look. The wolf," she stopped, started again harder. "The wolf shouldn't be alive. He lost too much and the cold should have finished what the arrows started. He isn't dead because he decided not to be. I've seen it in beasts that have a reason." He kept looking at you. "His life is mine," I said. My voice came out cracked. "And mine his. He wasn't deciding for himself. He was holding the door for both of us." She looked at me a long moment. I could not tell if she believed me or thought me feverish. Then she rose, went to the fire, and came back with a wooden cup of the bitter boiling that turned out to be a broth so thick and dark it was nearly a paste, and she put it into my hands and stood over me until I drank it. It was the finest thing I have ever tasted. I have eaten at the tables of every hold in Karnath, and I would trade all of it for that one cup on that one floor. And as the heat of it spread through me, not the fire's heat that had been in me a while, but a heat that seemed to run outward from wherever her hands had touched, along the shoulder she'd sewn, along the wrist she'd chafed the blood back into, I felt the strangest thing I have ever felt. The cold that had gone all the way into me on the pass, the deep cold, the one I had thought would never fully leave a man who had felt it, that cold went out. Not toward the fire, toward her. As if some part of me that had been frozen so long I had stopped noticing it where ice had, without asking my leave, begun to thaw. I did not understand it then. I only knew I did not want her to move away from me, and I was a king who had spent 30 winters not wanting anyone near, so the wanting frightened me more than the men in the snow had. "What are you called?" I asked her. She was quiet for so long I thought she would not answer. "Leora," she said at last, and then flat as though laying down a card she expected to lose the hand with, "Though most call me the Ash Hand, or the Cursed Woman of the Pass, or nothing at all and cross the road." She looked at me with something that dared me to flinch. "You're on the wrong mountain to be picky about your rescuer, so you'll have to make do with a cursed one." I did not flinch. "Kaelin," I said. I did not say the rest. Not because I meant to lie. Because I had just understood something that stopped the words in my throat. My gray had let her carry him. The pack's whole nature is in the gray. A wolf that will not suffer a hand from any man had lain quiet under hers as under mine. The cold had gone out of me toward her. There is a thing the old wolf mothers of Karnath speak of, in a hush, half believed even by those who swear to it. A thing that is supposed to come once in a life if it comes at all, and to most kings never, and I had turned every woman my counsel paraded before me away from the door of it for 30 years because I had felt nothing, an emptiness I had made my peace with and called strength. I was feeling something now. On a stone floor, half dead, wrapped in a stranger's blankets, I was feeling it, and it had the shape of a name I had never been told and somehow already knew. So I said only Kaelin, and lay still, and watched her bank the fire for the night, and did not tell the Cursed Woman of the Pass that the man she had dragged out of the snow was her king. The storm closed the pass behind me the way she'd said it would. I woke the second morning to a white so total it had swallowed the trees, and to the understanding that I was not going anywhere for days, and that below me, a day's ride down in the gray hold, my people believed me dead. I could do nothing about that. The knowing sat in me like a stone. Somewhere down that mountain, one of the 6 who had watched me die was telling my counsel I was lost, and I did not yet know which of them had turned, or how high the rot went, or who had sent the raven with the lie about the border. A king 3 days from his hall with a hole in his shoulder, and no horse and no sword arm worth the name is not a king. He is a man in a hut in the snow. So I set the stone down where I could feel it and no more, and I did the one thing left to me, which was to watch, and to learn the country I had fallen into. And the country was her. I have said she was hard, and she was. She spoke little and asked nothing and gave the sense always of a person braced for a blow. But 3 days snowed into one small room with a woman will teach you what a year at a distance will not, and I began to see, under the hardness, the shape of what she actually was, and it was nothing the word cursed had led me to expect. The wolves came, for one thing. I heard them the second night, not the pack song of a hunt, but single voices close at the door, and I got my knife because a man does. Leora took it out of my hand without a word, opened the door into the teeth of the storm, and let in a half-grown wolf, lame in one hind leg, that limped to the fire and lay down against Grail's flank as though it had done so every night of its life. In the morning there were two more curled against the wall, a grizzled old male missing an ear, and a lean young female with a healed break in her foreleg that had been set, I saw, by someone who knew exactly how to set it. "They yours?" I asked. She was crushing something in a stone bowl and did not look up. "No one's, mine as much as anyone's." A pause. "That one," the lame half-grown, "came off the pass last winter with a foot in a hunter's snare. Yours came off it too, likely, before you knew you'd lost them." She said yours with an edge. "The old one's from the hold. Ran off years back, they say, gone bad, gone rogue, kill it on sight. He's not gone bad. He's old and his teeth are worn and he can't take his share at a hold kill anymore. So he came up here to die, and I wouldn't let him, and now he won't leave. Curse of the ash hand, I suppose. Even the beasts they throw away come to me." I lay there and watched a rogue wolf the gray hold had condemned to death sleep safe against my own gray, at the fire of a woman they had condemned along with him. And I began to understand that I had fallen into the keeping of the one soul on the whole mountain who did not throw anything away. I made her talk over those days. It was not easy. She parted with words the way a poor man parts with coin. But the storm was long and the room was small, and I have some skill, and piece by piece I got it. She had not always been of the pass. She had come up to the North Watch as a girl in her father's train. He had been the watchwarden smith, she thought, or the smith's man. She spoke of him the way you speak of a good thing lost early. There had been a watchtower then above the hold, the cairn watch, that kept the beacon lit through the winters so the shepherds and the traders and the outlying steadings would know the pass was held and could find their way in from the dark and the drift. She had grown up in its shadow. She had loved it, I think, the way children love the one great thing in a small world. And then there had been a fire. She told it plainly and fast, the way she did everything, and the plainness was the worst part. There had been a night, a bad one, the wind up and the drink flowing in the watch-house below the tower, and the warden of the pass drunk at his post with the beacon guttering and no one minding it. And a shepherd's family had been out in it, lost, following a beacon that went dark, and the old watchman, Bram, half blind and past his years but the only one sober, had gone up the tower to build the fire back so the shepherds would have a light to steer by. And something had gone wrong. The oil, the wind, the old dry timber, the tower had gone up like a torch with Bram inside it. "They came out of the watch-house when the whole sky went orange," she said, staring into her own small fire, "and by then I was already in it. I was 15. I don't remember deciding to. I got Bram down. I got him out. His hands were—" She stopped and looked at her own, red and scarred to the wrist, and I understood at last where the name came from. The tower was gone by dawn. Bram lived but broken and could not speak of it after and was sent down to the hold, and I don't know if he still. She shook her head once hard and came back to the plain telling. And the warden of the pass stood up in the light of the coals with the drink still on him and the whole hold looking for someone to hang the ruin on, and he pointed at the smith's girl with the burned hands and said she had done it, playing where she shouldn't, knocked the oil, set the beacon house alight, and who was I to say otherwise? A girl with no father left, and no name worth the hold's while, and my hands the exact color of guilt. The fire popped. One of the wolves sighed in its sleep. "They put me out," she said. "Not to the road," the warden argued for the road, "but the old Alpha then, he wouldn't hang a girl or road a girl on one man's word, so they put me out to the tree line, which is the same thing slower. Cursed they call me, because a thing has to be someone's fault, and I saved the wrong man and burned the right way to do it. That was," she counted, and I watched her decide whether to tell me the number and tell it. 11 winters ago. I've kept the pass since. Someone has to. The beacon's gone, but the pass isn't, and people still lose themselves on it, and their sheep and their wolves, and I go and get them, and I bring them here, and I put them back together, and I send them down. And the ones I send down tell the Holda beast must have dragged them clear, or the gods, or their own good luck, because it can't have been the ash hand, can it? It can't have been the cursed woman. She looked at me, and the daring was back in her eyes, and under it, for one bare instant before she covered it, something so tired and so lonely that it went into me like the needle had gone into her hands. So, now you know your rescuer's a curse who burned a man's hands off. Feel free to walk out into the storm. I did not walk out into the storm. I said, who was the warden of the pass? She frowned. Of everything I might have said, that was not it. Does it matter? It matters to me. Who was he? He's not warden anymore, she said. He did well out of the fire, whatever else. A man who catches the culprit gets rewarded even if he made her up. He went down to the hold and he rose. Captain, last I heard, close to the king. She said the king the way she said the gods, a distant thing that had never once looked her way. His name is Verk. I lay very still and looked at the fire, and I did not let my face do what it wanted to do, because I did not want to frighten her with it. Verk, my captain of the pass watch, the man who had brought me the Raven's news of the breach 3 nights running. The man who had ridden out with me that morning at the head of my own 6, and who, when the drift stood up, had turned his horse and looked away. The trap on the pass and the lie of the tower had the same hand behind them. I had come up the mountain nearly dead, and been saved by the one person my own captain had spent 11 years making sure no one in Karnath would ever believe. You've gone quiet, Leora said. There was wariness in it. Men go quiet before they decide the cursed woman's touch is in them and they'd best be gone. I've gone quiet, I said, because I am ashamed. She stared at me. Not of you, I said, never of you, of the men who let it be done to you, of a king who let his hold throw away the only soul on his mountain who was worth a damn. I met her eyes. I've gone quiet, Leora, because I owe you a debt I can't yet pay, and I'm a man who hates owing what he can't yet pay. You owe me nothing, she said roughly. I'd have dug out a dog. Don't make it more than it is. But she looked away when she said it into the fire, and her jaw was working, and I understood that no one, not in 11 winters, not once, had told her they were ashamed on her behalf, and that it had undone something in her she did not know how to have undone. The days ran together, white and small, and I will say it, though a king is not supposed to happy. That is the truth of it. Trapped in a hut at the tree line with a hole in my shoulder and my hall usurped below me, I was happier than I had been in 30 years, and I knew exactly why, and I was too much of a coward yet to say so. I healed. She was a hard nurse and a good one, and I did as I was told because it was the price of staying near her. When I could stand I made myself useful, split her wood one-armed until she took the axe off me with a look, mended the door I'd been carried through, sat up with the old earless wolf the night his breathing went bad and learned from her, hands over hers, how to ease a beast that has decided to go. He didn't go that night. He rallied. She looked at me across his gray body in the gray light, and something passed between us that had no words and needed none. I watched her in those days be gentle. It was a thing she did only when she thought no one worth counting was watching, and she did not count me a stranger, passing through, gone with the thaw, so she let me see it. I saw her sit up half a night with the lame half-grown when its leg turned bad, whispering to it the way she'd whispered to Grail in the drift. I saw her go out into a lull in the storm with a coil of rope over her shoulder because she'd heard, or felt, or simply somehow known that something was lost on the pass, and come back 3 hours later blue to the lips dragging a half-frozen ewe that had wandered up from an outlying steading, and warm it back to life at her own fire, and never once think to be praised for it. She fed the wolves before she fed herself. She fed me before she fed herself. She had made, out of the ruin they'd cast her into, a small fierce kingdom of exactly the things Karnath had thrown away, and she reigned over it with burned hands and asked nothing, and no one below her even knew it existed. And I fell. There is no gentler word for it, and I will not reach for one. I who had turned away every match, every alliance, every careful girl in her careful gown, fell like the drift off the shoulder of the pass, all at once, and with a sound like the sky clearing its throat, for a spare hard woman with a scar through her eyebrow who called herself a curse. The bond had known before I did that thaw, running outward from her every touch, that had never once cooled. But it was not the bond I fell for. A man can carry a bond and never love. It was the woman. It was the whisper to the frightened wolf. It was the you warmed back to life by hands that were the price of a life 11 years ago and had never stopped paying. It was the way she flinched, still, when I moved too fast near her, and the way she had stopped flinching by the end when it was me. I told her at last on the 6th night, because Grail got up. He had been down since the drift, healing slow, and that 6th evening he heaved himself up off the floor for the first time and crossed the little room, stiff and low, and put his great gray head under Leora's hand where she sat, and leaned the whole weight of himself against her, and closed his eyes. She went still. She looked at me over him, Grail, who had let 3 men touch him in his life, and she said, uncertain in a way I had not heard from her, "Why does he do that? He does that like I'm." "Like you're mine," I said, "because you are, or I'm yours. It's the same thing, and I've been a coward about it for 6 days." She took her hand off the wolf. "Don't," she said. "Don't you make sport of me, stranger. I've had every kind of cruelty on this mountain, but never that one, and I find I can't bear it, so don't." "It isn't sport." I got up. My shoulder pulled, and I let it. "There's a thing the old wolf mothers speak of, once in a life if it comes at all, a cold in a man that goes out toward one soul and one only and never comes back. My gray won't suffer a hand but yours. When you touched me on that slope, the deep cold went out of me, and it has not come back, and it will not while you live, because you are the mate the bond made for me, Leora. And I have known it since the first cup of broth, and I've been afraid of it every hour since. Because a woman who has been thrown away 11 times over is owed better than a man who says such a thing on the night before the thaw and then walks down the mountain." She was shaking her head, backing up, and the wolves had lifted theirs. "Even if that were true," she said, and her voice cracked on it, "it doesn't matter, does it? Because you'll go down when the pass opens, and whatever you are down there, you'll be down there, and I'll be the cursed woman of the tree line, and no bond in the world crosses that road. So I'll thank you not to hand me a thing I can't keep. It's crueler than the road would have been." And there it was, the moment I had to choose. I could tell her who I was, and watch the little happy kingdom of the hut turn in an instant into a thing she owed a king, a debt, a claiming, everything I did not want it to be. Or I could hold the truth one night more and go down and come back for her not as a debtor but as a man who had put right what his hold had done, so that when I asked her it would be a free thing freely given and not a rescue she felt she must repay. I chose wrong, I think, though I have never been sure. I held it one night more. "When the pass opens," I said, "I have to go down. There are things I have to set right that I can't set right from here, and one of them is a debt owed to you by every soul in the gray hold, and I mean to see it paid. But hear me, Leora." I took her scarred hands in mine, both of them, and she let me, though she was still shaking. "I am not walking down this mountain and forgetting you. Whatever crossing you think there is that no bond can cross, I am going to cross it. And then I am coming back up this pass, and I am going to ask you a question, and you are going to be free to say no. But I will ask it standing in the light where everyone who ever called you cursed can see me do it. That's my vow, not the bond's, mine." She did not believe me. I saw that she did not. She had been promised the world by men who forgot her by the next hold, and here was one more, on the last night before the thaw, promising to cross the uncrossable road. But she let me hold her hands, and she did not send me out into the storm. And when the fire burned down that night, she sat beside me against the wall with the wolves around us and Grail's head in her lap. and for a few hours the road did not exist, and there was only the small, warm kingdom of the things no one else had wanted, and the two of us in the middle of it, thawing. The pass opened on the 8th day. I knew before I woke that the light in the hut was different, and there was a dripping from the eaves that had not been there, and the great white silence of the storm had broken into wind and the far-off crack of shifting snow. Leora was already up, already dressed for cold, already turned to iron again the way she went when there were things to be done. She did not look at me. She had been not looking at me since the gray light came, and I understood. This was the morning she had braced for since the first cup of broth, the morning the passing stranger passed. "I'll take you down as far as the last steading," she said to the fire. "You can get a horse there and word to wherever you're going. After that," she stopped, started again hard. "After that you're not my trouble." "Leora." "Don't," she still would not look. "You made me a vow last night and I let you, and that was a soft thing and I'm not soft, so let's neither of us speak of it and you'll go down and be whatever you are, and I'll—" The wolf song stopped her. It came up from below, not one voice, many. The pack cry of the gray holds own wolves, and under it, faint on the wind, a horn. Leora's head came up. Grail's came up. And I knew the horn because I had ordered it cast, and it was the muster horn of the gray hold, the one that is only sounded for a death or a crowning or a war, and someone was sounding it now, which meant that below me, on the last morning of the storm, my Captain Verk was making his move, burying his dead king and taking the empty seat, or worse, and I was a day too far away up a mountain with one good arm. "That's the hold," Leora said. "That's something's wrong down there, that's the great horn." She looked at me, and I watched her see my face and watched her begin, at last, to understand that the stranger in her hut was not nothing. "Why do you look like that, Kaelin? Why do you look like a man who knows that horn?" There was no holding it any longer, and I was done holding it, because the time for the clean way had run out the moment the horn sounded, and a king does not get the endings he would choose, only the ones the world hands him. "Because I own it," I said. She went white. "I'm Kaelin," I said, "Alpha King of Karnath, Lord of the Grey Hold. That's my horn and that's my hall, and the man sounding it is Verk, your warden, the one who burned Bram and blamed you and rose out of it, because 8 days ago he lay in the snow of this pass and watched his own king go into the drift and rode down to tell my council I was dead. He tried to kill me, Leora. He tried to kill my Grey, because he knew that killing the Grey kills the king, and he very nearly had it. And the only reason he doesn't have my hall and my crown clean and cold this morning is that a cursed woman he made up 11 winters ago went down into a live drift after a stranger and a wolf and pulled us both back into the light. I have handed hard things to hard people in my life. I have never watched a thing land the way that landed on her. Everything she had built, the safe distance, the passing stranger, the vow she would not let herself believe, the whole careful architecture of a woman who had learned never to be caught hoping, I watched it come down, all at once off the shoulder of her, with a sound like the sky clearing its throat. "You're the king," she said. It was barely a voice. "I'm the king." "The king," she laughed, and it was a terrible laugh, and the wolves flinched from it. Of course you are. 11 years I keep this pass for a hold that spits when it says my name, and the one soul I drag out of the snow with my own burned hands is the king himself, and now—" She backed away from me into the door, and her hand was at the latch. "Now I understand the vow. Now I understand the cross, the road. You'll take me down and stand me up in the light and pay your debt in front of everyone. The king who married the curse to show what a fine, soft king he is. And I'll be a thing you owed forever, a rescue you repaid. And I told you that was crueler than the road." "Leora." "Get your horse," she said, and wrenched the door open on the bright, cruel morning. "You've a hall to take back. Go and take it. You don't need the ash hand for that." And she went out into the snow. But Grail did not go after me. That is the thing I will remember. I moved for the door and my own gray wolf, healed enough now to stand, stepped in front of it and put himself between me and the woman going out into the cold, and looked at me, his alpha, his life, with a plain refusal in his eyes. Not like this, the look said. Not her, thrown away twice. And I stopped. Because a man may be a fool, but he should not be a fool twice past a thing his own gray has told him. I did not chase her down the mountain. I let her go, because chasing was one more thing done to her, and she had had enough done to her. I went out into the light and I whistled the wolves, hers, all of them, the lame and the old and the broken, and I said to them, feeling half a madman, keep her till I've earned the right to ask. And whether they understood me or only understood the gray at my side, they went where she'd gone, a ragged guard of thrown-away things around a thrown-away woman, and I turned my face down the mountain toward the sound of my own horn calling me dead, and I began to walk. I came into the gray hold at dusk of the next day, on a borrowed horse from the last steading, with my gray at my stirrup and my arm in a sling and 8 days of the mountain on me, and I came in by the shepherd's gate, quiet, because a king presumed dead learns more in an hour walking his own hall unknown than in a year on his seat. And I learned it fast. The hold was in mourning black and muster red both at once, grief for the lost king and the machinery of succession already grinding, and at the center of it in my hall, in my own high seat though not yet crowned, sat Verk, my captain. He had done it beautifully, I will give him that. He had brought me up the mountain to my death and ridden down weeping, the loyal captain who had seen his king lost and could not save him. He had produced the tale of the border breach and the ambush by Wolves Not of Carnath, so that even the men who had watched me die could tell it as a battle bravely lost rather than a murder quietly done. And he had spent 8 days being the strong, grieving hand the frightened hold reached for, so that when the horn sounded, and the council gathered to name a regent, or more, there was only one hand it would fall to. I stood in the shadow of my own gallery in a shepherd's cloak, and watched him grieve for me in my own hall, and I felt something in me go very cold and very clear. I did not come in with a sword. I had one good arm. A sword would have been a boy's answer. I came in with the truth, which is the only weapon a king ever really has that no one can turn against him, and I came in at the one moment it would land hardest, when the council rose at the black end of the hall to put the question of the seat. I walked out of the shadow and down the length of my own hall in my shepherd's cloak with my gray wolf at my side, and I put my hood back, and I let them see me. I will not spend words on the noise of it. There was noise. A man risen from the drifts, black-bearded and hollow with the mountain, walking his own dead man's walk down his own hall toward the man in his seat. There was noise, and there was Verk going the color of the snow he'd left me in, and there were the 6 who had watched me die, each finding a different wall to look at. I let it break over me. I walked until I stood at the foot of my own high seat and looked up at the man in it. "Get up," I said quietly. "You're in my chair." He got up. He had the wit to try even then. He came down the steps with his arms spreading, joy breaking over his face like a sunrise. My king, alive, the gods be praised. We thought you lost." "You watch me go into the drift," I said, still quiet, and the quiet did what shouting never could. The whole hall leaned in to hear it. "You brought me up the pass on a lie of a breach that was never there, with 6 of my sworn men who did not draw their steel, and you turned your horse and you looked away, and you rode down here and you told my hold I was dead, and you have spent 8 days making yourself the hand my crown would fall into. And it would have. You did it well. You'd have had it all, Verk, clean and cold. But for one thing you never counted, because you spent 11 winters making sure no one in Carnath would ever count her." The hall was utterly silent now. "You know the pass," I said. "You were its warden. You know a man doesn't come out of a live drift on the Ashen Pass alone. So who do you suppose pulled your king out of the snow, Captain? Who do you suppose went down into the slope you left me buried in, after a stranger and a dying wolf with her own 2 hands? He knew. I watched him know. I watched the color of the snow go out of his face and something worse come into it. Say her name, I said. You made it a curse in this hall. You've said it 1,000 ways, the ash hand, the cursed woman, the one who burned the cairn. Say it now, the woman who kept your king alive when you left him for dead. Say her name. He would not. So I said it, and I said it to the whole of the grey hold, in my own hall, from the foot of my own seat. Leora, I said, the smith's daughter, 15 years old the night the cairn watch burned, and the only soul on this mountain sober enough and brave enough to go up into a burning tower and carry old Bram out of it, and paid for it with the skin of her hands, and paid for it again, when the man who'd let the beacon die drunk at his post stood up in the coals and needed someone to blame, and blamed a girl with no father and burned hands the color of guilt. I turned in a slow circle so they could all have it, every face I had ruled and failed. You cast her out. My father's hold cast her out to the tree line to die slow, on one drunk man's word, and she did not die. She kept the pass. 11 winters. Every lost shepherd and strayed ewe and snared wolf you've had come home, by the grace of the gods it was her. It was the ash hand, dragging your people out of the snow you'd told her she wasn't fit to walk on. And when her king went into the drift by her old warden's hand, she dragged him out too, not knowing him, wanting nothing, because she does not throw things away, which is a thing not one of you in this hall can say. I looked back at Verk, and I let him see the whole of it in my face. Where is Bram? I said. The watchman, she thinks him dead or lost. Where is he? And out of the crowd at the side of the hall, because he had come, of course he had come, the muster horn calls the whole hold. A bent old man was pushed forward by the people around him, a man with a ruined face and hands like melted candles, who had not spoken, they'd all long said, since the night the tower burned. And this old broken man looked at me, and then he looked at Verk, and 11 years of a silence that everyone had taken for damage broke, and it turned out it had never been damage at all. It had been fear. Fear of the man who'd risen out of the fire he caused. She carried me down, Bram said. His voice was a rasp unused, terrible, and the whole hall strained to catch it. The girl through the flames. I've had 11 years to say it, and no king to say it to, and the one man who'd have stopped my mouth sitting closer to the crown each year. He lifted one ruined hand and pointed it, shaking, at Verk. He was warden. He was drunk. The beacon died because he let it die, and Bram went up to build it back, and the oil store went up because he'd left it stove in and open by the fire 2 nights running and never minded it. And it was his ruin, his and no one's else. And a 15-year-old girl walked into it and carried a blind old man out on her back, and he stood in the coals and called her the arsonist to save his own neck. The old man was weeping now, the tears running into the ruin of his face. 11 years, my king. I let them curse the child who saved me for 11 years because I was afraid of him. That's the sin on this hold. Not hers. Never hers. Mine and his and every soul in this hall who found it easier to hate a girl than to look at a captain. I have seen holds turn. I have never seen one turn like the grey hold turned that night, not all at once, and not cleanly, because shame does not move cleanly through a crowd, but I watched it move, face by face, the terrible slow arithmetic of 100 people realizing at the same moment what they had spent 11 years pretending not to know. Verk reached for the last thing men like him reach for, which is a blade, and my grey had him off his feet and pinned before his hand closed on the hilt, and I let the wolf hold him there in front of them all, and I did not kill him, because a clean death was more than he'd given the girl he'd buried alive in a name. He'll answer to the whole hold's law in the open, for the tower and for the pass and for the treason on the ashen road, I said. Every part of it said aloud, so it can never be a whisper again. That's his sentence. He wanted to rise where no one would look too close. He'll finish where everyone does. And then I did the thing I had walked down a mountain to be able to do. I took the crown off my own head, the thin grey circlet of the Alphas of Karnath, and I held it up so the whole hall could see it, and I said, 11 years ago this hold threw away the best soul on its mountain. I will not sit this seat one more winter as the king of a hold that did that and called it justice. So here is what the Grey Hold is going to do to earn its king back. It is going to relight the cairn watch, rebuild the tower stone by stone and put the beacon back in the sky where it belongs, and it is going to name the keeper of that watch before all of Carneth, the woman who has kept the pass with no beacon and no thanks and no name for 11 winters. That's not my gift to give her. It's your debt to pay, every one of you. I looked at them and I put the crown back on. I'm going back up the pass in the morning to ask her to come down and take what's hers. She is free to say no. I pray to every god of the north that she doesn't, but she is free. And if she says no, you will rebuild that tower anyway and light it anyway, and it will burn every winter of my reign as this Hold's apology, whether she ever sees it or not. That is where I would have ended it that night, a king's decree, a hall put right, a mountain to climb again in the morning to ask a free question of a free woman. But the mountain was not done with us. The horn woke me before dawn, not the muster horn this time, but the shepherd's alarm from the north wall, the wolves in the fold cry, and I came up out of sleep in my own reclaimed chamber with my heart already knowing before my head did that something was wrong on the pass. Verk's men. He had not come up the mountain alone 8 days ago, and he had not risen alone, and the ones who'd cast their lot with him, the 6 who would not draw their steel, and others, hard men who had backed the coming Captain King and now saw their patron pinned under a wolf and their necks in the open law. Those men had done the last desperate thing that cornered men do. In the black before dawn they had broken from the hold and made for the pass, to run for the border while the running was good, and they had not gone quietly. They had fired the north steadings behind them to cover the flight, the outlying steadings under the tree line, in the dark, in the snow, with the shepherd families asleep inside them. The same cruelty, the same fire set to hide a coward's tracks, 11 years turned around and done again. And between those burning steadings and the high dark pass, at the tree line, in a stone hut, was the one soul on the whole mountain who does not let a fire burn with people in it. I have never dressed and armed and mounted so fast in my life. I went up the pass in the dark with my gray ahead of me and half the hold behind me, the hold turned, the hold ashamed, the hold desperate now to be the thing it had failed to be. And we came up into the tree line to a scene I will carry to my pyre. The steadings were burning, and into the burning again one small hard figure was going. I saw her against the orange, Leora, throwing a shepherd's child up out of a low window to a woman already clear, going back for the next, her burned hands doing again the only thing they have ever known how to do. And around her, turning the whole black cruelty of it, were the wolves, her wolves. The lame half-grown and the old earless rogue and the lean young female with the mended leg, and a dozen more the pass had cast away and she had kept. They had thrown themselves at Verk's fleeing men in the dark, a fury of thrown-away things, and turned the flight into a rout, and driven the fire-setters back off the pass and into our arms as we came up, so that not one of them reached the border, and every one of them answered in the open for what they'd done. But that is not what I remember. What I remember is coming off my horse into the snow and the smoke and finding her, filthy, singed, her hands worse than they'd been, a child still in her arms, and the 2 of us standing in the light of the fire she had once been blamed for and had spent her life since walking into, and the whole Grey Hold coming up the pass behind me and seeing, at last, with its own eyes, in the plainest light there is, exactly what the Ash Hand was and had always been. She saw them come. She saw the hold that had cursed her cresting the pass, and she went stiff as she always did, braced for the blow. And I watched the hold reach her, and I watched what a hold does when its shame catches up with it in the light of a fire and cannot look away any longer. Old Bram was among them, carried up on a litter because he would not be left behind, and he was the first to reach her. The old broken watchman she thought lost, whose hands she'd bought with her own, hauled himself off his litter and went down on his ruined knees in the snow in front of her, and lifted his melted hands to her, and the whole Grey Hold, seeing him, went down too. Not all at once and not cleanly, but face by face, family by family. The mountain that had thrown her away knelt in the burning snow before the woman who had never once thrown any of them away, and there was no horn for it and no decree. Only shame turned at last into the only shape that can undo it. And I came and stood in front of her while her mountain knelt, and I did not kneel, not yet, because I had made her a vow that I would ask standing in the light where everyone could see, and I meant to keep it to the letter. You said no bond crosses that road, I said. The child had been lifted from her arms. Her hands hung burned at her sides. You said I'd stand you up in the light and pay you like a debt, so look. I did not touch her. I gave her the whole of it plain. There's no debt here, Leora. I told them the truth of the tower before I ever came for you, before there was a fire tonight, before there was a rescue to repay. Verk's judged, Bram's spoken. The hold knows what you are, and it's kneeling, and I never asked it to. That's not me buying you out of shame. That's your mountain giving back what it stole, because it finally couldn't stand to hold it any longer. I took one breath. So the road's crossed. I told you I'd cross it, and I have. And now the only thing standing between the tree line and the gray hold is a question, and it's yours to answer, and you are free, freer than you've been in 11 winters, to say no. Her eyes were bright and furious and terrified in the firelight. Ask it then, she said low. You've made your speech. Ask it, and let's see what a free woman says. And now, and only now, I knelt. In the snow, in the smoke, in front of my whole kneeling hold, the Alpha King of Karrnath went down on one knee before the cursed woman of the pass, and I took her burned hands as gently as a man has ever held anything, and I said, Aura of the Ashen Pass, keeper of the mountain no one thanked you for keeping. The bond made you mine, and I'd be yours without it. I've known since the first cup of broth, and I'll know it the last winter I draw breath. I've no claim on you. I've only a question. I looked up at her. Come down off the tree line. Be my Luna, and this holds, not because you're owed it, but because there is not one soul in all of Karrnath more fit to sit above a people than the woman who kept saving them when they'd cast her out. Come down and rule the mountain you've been guarding alone, or send me back to my hall single, and I'll rebuild your tower and light your beacon and keep the pass in your name whether you have me or not. A breath. But I would rather keep it beside you. Every winter left to me. That's the whole of it. That's my question. She looked at me for a long, long time, and the fire burned down around us, and the hold knelt in the snow, and the wolves, her wolves and my gray together, drew in close around the two of us in the dark, a ring of the kept and the unthrown away. I'll not be a curse turned lucky for your comfort, she said at last, fierce, her voice shaking. I'll not be a story your hold tells to feel forgiven. If I come down as myself, ash hands and all, and I keep the pass, my way, and I answer to no council that ever spat my name, and the tree line stays mine, and the wolves stay ours, all of them, the lame and the old and the ones your hold gave up on. Those are my terms. You'll not soften me, and you'll not shut me up in a hall. I keep the mountain. You keep the mountain, I said. On your terms, everyone. I'd have no other kind of Luna. And she took my hands, she took them on her own, no one turning them for her, and she pulled me up out of the snow, because she has never once let a thing lie in the cold that she could pull back into the light, and she said, rough and low and only for me, then get up off your knee, Alpha King. You'll take the frost worse than the toes. And that is how the cursed woman of the past became the Luna of the gray hold, not carried down, not owed, not softened. Pulled down by her own hand, on her own terms, into a mountain kneeling in the snow. They rebuilt the cairn watch that summer, stone by stone, the whole hold at it, and when it was done they did not name it for me, though it is a king's law that towers take the king's name. They named it for old Bram, who lived another 3 good years in the sun of it and spoke, after that night, whenever he pleased, and never again of anything but the girl who carried him down. And in the first snow of that first winter, Leora climbed the pass to light the new beacon herself, with her own burned hands. The fire she had been blamed for 11 winters set at last into the sky the right way, where it belongs, So the shepherds and the traders and the strayed and the lost would know the pass was held and could find their way in out of the dark. I climbed it behind her, a step behind with the gray, and I let her walk ahead of me the whole way up, and I have let her walk ahead every first snow since. My council thinks it strange, a king a step behind his Luna on his own mountain. I have never troubled to explain it to them. But I will tell you, because it is the truest thing I own, and I have learned not to be a coward about the true things. I walk a step behind her up the Ashen Pass because the pass was hers before it was ever mine. She kept it in the dark, with no beacon and no thanks and no name. For every winter I sat warm and blind in my hall below and never once looked up to see who was keeping the light. I owe her the mountain. And the only way I have found to say so, that she will let me say, that she will not turn away with a rough word and a shove of the axe, is to fall in behind her every first snow and let her lead me up her own mountain to her own fire, the great wolf between us, the lame and the old and the unthrown away padding along at our heels, and to watch her burned hands cup the flame to life in the dark, and to keep my peace, and to follow her home.